and today I am going to show you how to make one of my #1 sellers is the catfish and shrimp rice bowl. So what that consists of is a seared catfish, seasoned shrimp on a bed of rice with lettuce, and then it's also served with Pico de Gallo, and then also I have my own special sauce that I created specifically for this dish. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and get started. What you need is a skillet. Your skillet is gonna be it's gonna need to be hot, okay? You're gonna need olive oil. You have an option. You can use extra virgin olive oil or you can use vegetable oil. So you wanna make sure that your skillet is hot. And you want just enough to coat the bottom of your skillet and make sure that you actually have enough to coat your rice. So actually, I'm going to use 2 cups of rice. It's already been measured out. And I'm just going to go ahead and add that in there now. So you can hear that sizzling. So as it sizzles, it's going to turn like an opaque color. That's what you're looking for. So you want to make sure that you're consistently mixing this around. You don't want to leave it unattended because it will burn real easily. So we don't want to burn our rice. So you're just going to continue to stir that. And as the pieces, and as you can see, the pieces are, some of the rice has already begun to change color. So that is actually what we're looking for, but we want all of our rice to be that same color. So our rice is exactly where it needs to be. So we're gonna go ahead and add water off in here. So you wanna make sure that you're extremely careful with this because this rice is really hot, and plus it has oil. We get ready to add water on the inside. So it's gonna create a lot of steam. So you definitely wanna make sure you're careful. And as you see, as that bubbles up, so we're just going to continue to stir that. We're going to add water in here at least 2 times. Just depends on how much rice that you're actually fixing, but you want enough to cover the top of the rice, and it's going to boil down. So this method here, I love to use this method to cook rice. This is like a foolproof way of making sure that your rice comes out perfect every time. This is a way that I learned from one of my cousins, his ex-wife. She was Hispanic, and we kind of swapped recipes. So she showed me how to fix what they call Mexican poor man's rice, and I showed her how to fix enchiladas my mother's way. Actually, I can't take credit for that. So we swapped recipes on that. So I'm not going to show you that exact process because I did alter it. However, it's still the same steps, just without the tomatoes and the additional seasonings that normally goes along in there. So as you see, as that is bubbling, that's what we're actually looking for. So we're going to let that boil down just a little bit more, and then we're going to add more water into it. Once we add water into that, then that should be it for the second go around. And then we'll be able to put our lid on there, and as it cooks, the water is going to absorb in that rice, and we're just going to set it off to the side. So I'm going to add a little salt, actually kosher salt, into there and to give this rice a little flavor. And just remember, be careful with your salt. You can put salt in, but you can't take it out. So as you see, as this is boiling, it is soaking up that water real quick. So this is something that you definitely have to keep your eye on, because if you don't, it will burn real quickly. I'm going to turn my fire down just a little bit. So actually that is cooking up really nicely. So over here we have our rice that is set. We did add water in here one more time. You want to make sure that it's to the top of the rice. You don't want to overfill. So this right here, you want to put a lid on it. Once that water boils down some, you want to put a lid on there and let that cook the rest of the way. Take it off the eye. Okay, so now we're going to get started over here where we have our catfish fillets, and then we have our shrimp. Our shrimp has already been deveined and peeled. So we have our seasonings here, so we're gonna go ahead and get started on getting this seasoned. So we have our smoked paprika. And typically this is like a rub. So anytime that you make a rub, typically with my rubs, I'll use either between tablespoons and teaspoons. So here with the smoked paprika, this is probably about a teaspoon in here. So then we're gonna add onion powder. I love onion powder. So I would probably say about a tablespoon of that. And we're gonna use these seasoning, this rub to season the shrimp and the fish. So I just use all of it. We're gonna add a little bit of kosher salt. I think that one might have been just a tad bit too much. We're just gonna take a little pinch of that out of there. And then we're gonna add our little Zatarains Blackened season off in here. So this is gonna give it a little kick, but it's also gonna give it an additional flavor. So I'm just gonna take my finger there and mix that in, mix that around. So now that we got that mixed in, we're gonna go ahead and start seasoning our catfish fillet. I'm gonna move that shrimp over here. You're just gonna sprinkle that across the top. You're gonna put enough on there to cover it, okay? Because once we got it covered, we're just gonna pat it in. You don't wanna rub it because what happens is that it's gonna stick to your fingers and you'll have most of your seasoning on your fingers, so you just wanna pat that in. So you wanna go back over that and pat that in just like that. If you don't plan on using all your rub, I wouldn't suggest to stick your fingers back in there because that would be contaminating it, but because I know I'm gonna use all of that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and continue to do that. I'm gonna flip this over because we need to season the other side. So the rub is gonna stick to your fingers, so just rub that, what you have off your hands, just rub it onto that fish. It'll come right on off. So that way we'll make sure we're not wasting any seasonings. Flip this over. We have our eye on. We're gonna go ahead and let our skillet warm up. And as we're waiting for that to warm up, we're gonna season our shrimp. Fillet seasoned. We're gonna go ahead and add olive oil in our pan. So I would say probably roughly about a tablespoon to start out with. Just make the necessary adjustments. You don't want to have a whole lot in here. You just want enough to cover up the bottom because the catfish is actually gonna make its own juice. So when you put your fillets in, you want to put them in top first. We want to make sure we get that part cooked first because that's going to be our nice and good crispy side. When you put your pieces in there, you kind of want to alternate it some. And as that's cooking, we're gonna go ahead and season our shrimp. Now that we have our shrimp, we're gonna use the remainder of our rub to go ahead and get this seasoned. So make sure you massage that in really good, get all that shrimp covered. We wanna make sure that we really get that flavor in that shrimp. So now that we got our shrimp seasoned, we're gonna go ahead and put this in the refrigerator until it's time to cook it because we wanna make sure we maintain that temperature. So now that our fish is cooking, it's time to go ahead and turn it over. If you look and see, if you see the color here, that's a signal heat indicator right there to let you know it's time to go ahead and flip that over. So you see how you have that nice golden crust that's at the top? That's exactly what we're looking for. Okay, if I can get this fish flipped over. This is is one reason why it's important to use a non-stick skillet. So that nice pretty brown color right there, that's exactly what we're looking for. So as that is cooking, we're gonna go ahead and check on our rice. So as you see, that's exactly what we're looking for, that rice, just like that. So that rice has continued to cook. It absorbed the remainder of that water. So your rice should be perfect. We'll go ahead and taste it. That's good. That's perfect. Can't go wrong with that. So our fish is ready now. So I'm just going to turn the eye down on here. We're just going to take that out. And there you have your catfish pieces already. So what we're gonna do now is go ahead and get started on our pico. So what you're gonna need is your tomatoes chopped up. I specifically use Romas. Anytime I'm making pico, I will always use Roma tomatoes. It's just a personal preference, but you're welcome to use any type of tomato that you want, but I would suggest for you to use Roma. So we have here our cilantro that's already cut and ready to go. We have our onion powder, and then we also have our kosher salt. So you don't see any onions. Typically with Pico de Gallo, it normally comes with onions. I am not a big fan of eating onions. So what I've done is to compensate for that, I use the onion powder. But you are welcome to use onions, those of you that like onions. I will cook with onions, but I personally don't eat them. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and get started. So I am going to add my onion powder in here. Then I'm going to add my salt, not too much. Just going to add a little bit and we'll taste it to make sure to see where it's at. We'll go ahead and get that mixed. And then we're going to add our cilantro. So you want to be careful with this because, like I said, cilantro is very strong, so you don't want to add too much because it's very overpowering. So, and you would definitely be able to notice that right off the bat. And I can say, for an example, me and my middle girl, we went out to a restaurant where they served charro beans, and they did have a lot of cilantro in it. And her first complaint was, "Is there too much cilantro in here?" So you just want to make sure that you're very careful with that. Just a little bit more, then I'm going to go ahead and taste that to see where we're at, to make sure that we are good as far as the flavor. That is perfect. So now that we got that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get started on our shrimp. We're going to let our skillet warm up. We got our shrimp here that's already seasoned and ready to go. Now that we have our shrimp seasoned, our pan is already hot and ready to go. So we're gonna go ahead and add our shrimp in now. So as you're cooking your shrimp, you want to make sure that you not only keep an eye on it, but it doesn't take that long to cook. So With shrimp, you shouldn't have to cook it no longer than 3 minutes. Once it begins to turn its opaque color, that is your key indicator to go ahead and turn them over. And then also once they begin to curl, that is another sign for you to go ahead and turn your shrimp over so it can cook on the other side. Anytime you eat shrimp, you want to make sure that your shrimp is tender and it's juicy. It should never be rubbery, so like you're chewing on a rubber band. I don't know how many of y'all might have chewed on a rubber band, but that's kind of ideal of what happens when you overcook shrimp. Okay, maybe about 1 more minute or so, and these are actually will be done. So as you can see how they begin to curl and make that O, that little O look. So that's kind of what you're looking for. It's not kind of, it is what you're looking for. So we are ready to go. This shrimp is done. We'll go ahead and turn this eye off, remove it off of the fire. Then we're going to go ahead and get started on our plating. So we're going to taste our shrimp and make sure it's exactly where it needs to be. It's hot. That is perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and get started on our plating. So we have our rice that we cooked earlier that's been sitting and it's ready to go. Spread that out evenly. Now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and get our lettuce. So the lettuce that I'm using is actually a spring mix. It is not mandatory that you have to have that. If you prefer iceberg, you can use that or romaine, but I personally like to use the spring mix because it's colorful. So we want to make our dishes pop. So we're going to add just a little bit of this at the bottom. We don't want too much because we still want our rice to show. And then we're going to go ahead and get our catfish out of the oven that we cooked earlier. So we're going to take our catfish. We're going to lay that piece right in there. And then we're going to take our cilantro, our pico. We're going to place that pico right down the side there. Just going to scoot that over just a tad bit more. We got to make room for our shrimp. Then we're going to add our shrimp right off in there. Line it up. And then we're going to take our lime that we have for garnish. We're just going to put that in between, right there, the shrimp and the pico. And then we're going to take a little bit of that cilantro, and we're going to sprinkle just a little bit on there. Give it a little more greenery. And then here we have my special made sauce, which is a cilantro jalapeno sauce. So I did not give the recipe for this sauce because you have to buy it from me. But I made this specifically to go with this dish. So, and it is really good. So here's the finished dish right there. So there is your catfish, shrimp, and rice bowl, which consists of the pico, the lime, you have your rice, your lettuce, and then you also have the special made sauce.
Yes.
What's it taste like? It's so good.
It's like I just went to heaven.
What type of flavors you getting? Cajun, Latin?
The sauce. The sauce. She has the sauce. It's delicious. I want some more. Thank you, Miss Carmen. This is the best food I had all week.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank